Finally. Oh, I like the stream of people getting notes to jot down. Fisher!
What was 13?
13 was yes. It's the common difference is 7. Oh, 34 and 41 were the missing numbers. Did I miss that? Gianna? 1 was 2, 5, and 13. 4 is 3.5, 2 times 10 to the 6th. Sarah Grace Taylor. 7 was 3a squared plus ab squared. Miller. 6. A to the 4th bc z squared over xy plus 2 over a4x z squared. That was a grand one. Here would be how in the world do we do? Liv?
How would you do number 7?
I don't know. I haven't looked at number 7. Uh-oh. Ladies and gentlemen, we are missing some tools. Let's hope this pops up here. Wait, did you say number 7?
Yes.
Am I in the wrong one? I am. That's why this makes no sense. Is this the right one? No. Sorry.
Yeah.
Wait, it has to be here.
It
No.
starts 10.
Oh, you're usually last. That's why. Number 7. Oh, please tell me it's not at combining like terms, what is it? Is that what the one you're asking, number 7?
Yes.
What do you, alright. So let me preface this by telling you, Olivia, okay, Olivia, there is, the only thing you're going to have in your answers are either a squareds or ab squareds, because there are no other terms. There's no a to the 4ths, no a nothing, that's that. All right. So you look at this and you find like terms. Like terms have to have the same exact letters to the same exponents. So this is a like term, that's perfect. This is a like term, that's a like term. Okay, get that? You have 2a squareds. You add 4 more a squareds to it. How many a squareds is that? 2a squareds.
6a squared.
Yep, 6a squareds. But then you're taking 3 of those a squareds away. You're left with 3a squareds. Then you have 3ab squareds, and you're taking 2ab squareds away. You're left with just 1ab squared. Now, watch this. I've learned over the years something's taking an extremely amount of energy here. This will work much better after this. Does that help?
Yes.
That DL host thing is bad. Should we get rid of Google Chrome? Yes. More Google Chrome. Fire away, ladies and gentlemen. So little time and so much to do. That's not right.
How do you do number 9?
Number 9. Oh, that's a great one. Did they give you the formula? Did you write the formula down, Emma?
Yes.
Did you plug in the number they gave you for whatever the number was?
Yes.
And you still did not come up with whatever? So F equals 9/5 C plus 32, right? And they told you what Fahrenheit temperature was? So you put 59 in for F?
Yeah.
And then what did you do? You are now trying to solve for the letter C.
Yeah, so I did minus 32.
Let's do that, because that is absolutely positively the first step.
And then I took 32 from 59.
Wait, and then you did what?
I took the 32, and then minus 32 from 59.
Right, you got 27.
Yeah.
So then, the question that I ask the 7th graders every day of my life now is what happens when there's a fraction in front of the letter? And did you?
Yes.
So this becomes, you multiply by 5/9. You multiply by 5/9. This goes away.
Wait,
Little cross cancel here. 9 goes into 27.
isn't it 8 over 9?
I'm sorry, what?
What is it?
Eight.
Oh, I wrote down 8, not 5.
Oh no. So you end up with 15. C equals 15. Don't worry, you are not the only person that had that question. So even if you had the right thing or the wrong thing, it's still bears witness. Did I do something wrong?
No.
Liv!
2 things. Thank you for the Christmas set. And
Oh,
how did
you're
you
welcome.
do number 10?
How do I do number 10? Number 10 looks a bit like this. They already did they give you the drawing of all this, right? So you don't have to do any work at all. You just need to get yourself a little ratio box. And just, I would label it as such. You've got the big triangle and you got the small triangle. What are you comparing? You're comparing the heights to their shadows. As long as they're similar triangles, what they are. Assuming that this angle from the sun will be the same. What is the height of the big triangle? You don't know. What is the shadow of the big triangle? 28.7. Are you with me so far? What's the height of this one? Is that 6 or an 8?
6.
What's the shadow?
8.2.
8.2. Now, here is a what is this, 6?
Yeah.
Here is where you're hoping that something times 8.2 will give you this. Which it doesn't. Is it 3? No? 3, 24, 6? No. If that doesn't work, then you kind of need to make equal fractions and solve it. Or does it work? Am I missing something? X over 28.7 equals 6 over 8.2. Which means I have to use what little method here? Cross products. 8.2 times x, you do the diagonals times themselves, equals 6 times 28.7. Gosh, I hate ugly math, but let's do it. 6 times 28.7, 42, 52, 5, 12, 17. Did I get that right? 172.2 equals 8.2, and you just need to do that division then. Divide 8.2 into that. 172.2 divided by 8.2. Man, I wish I had a calculator. What is this? 164 and 82. Wow, it does work. 21. I get it from my hand. Hopefully the answer was 21. And what was 21? Feet, I guess. We may have been able to do that faster. I don't know. 21. 6 going to 8.2. Sure it does. Zachary!
So do 6 the whole time. Why don't we just do 1 big
I don't know if I have that much time actually. Why don't you pick the big ones and I'll let you know if we need to do them there.
14.
14. I mean, some of these probably are obvious enough that I don't have to do it. Wait, are you telling me this 22 here? Well, no, I'm going to do it just because. Okay, this parenthesis really doesn't do anything. But this, you have two negatives times themselves, you get plus 6.7. Anytime you have opposite signs when you add and subtract, you find their difference, put the bigger one on top, you end up with 4. And wait, that's not right, this is 6.7. You end up with 4.5, and the bigger one is bigger, so it's positive 4.5. I think I got that right. You would stop me if I got it wrong, wouldn't you? Autumn? Or Sophia?
Was it 20?
You could. Jason scores 3 points for each question answered correctly. Write an algebraic expression for the total number of points he will score if he answers n questions correctly. Well, Sophia, let's just put numbers in. Let's say he scored 3 problems right. How many? How much? 9. So this is my n. I'm picking numbers for n. What if he scored 6?
15.
So the question is, what are you doing to n every time? What did you do to 3 to get 9, 6 to get 18?
Multiplied it by 3.
And that's your algebraic expression. You multiply whatever n is by 3. They're just asking you to put it in whatever that is. Don't overthink that one. points for every question.
I thought an algebraic expression was not number, like one.
It's like a run-on sentence. You need one word to make a run-on sentence. It didn't say an equation. If it said an equation, then you'd have to write the rest of it. What would you write? 3n equals something. 3n equals what? Total points or whatever, but they just said an expression. Should be simple there. Yes, Emma?
I'm confused about how you do 18.
How I do it?
How do you know what one goes where?
Well, one of two things you have to do if you don't know these things. Either you got to make them all into fractions and find their equal, or make them all into decimals. So that's kind of your question. I probably would make these into decimals just to compare them. If you don't know what is 1/8 is a decimal, you probably got your little chart there. It's 125, right?
Yeah.
3/4 is -75, -0.5, and -2. And then remember, with negative numbers, ladies and gentlemen, the higher the negative number is, the lower it is. In other words, the farther away from 0 it is. If you look at this on the number line, here's 0. Okay, this is the only positive one there, so that has to be the biggest number. It's the only positive one. So 1/8 has to be biggest. And then where do these fall? Here's -1. So -0.5 is halfway there. Here's -0.5. -3/4 would have to be even farther still, -7.5. And -2 is way over here. So if you're ordering them from least to greatest, -2 is the smallest, then 0.75, and then 0.5. This is the only positive number, so it has to be the biggest.
Okay.
And I don't know. You just have to know that the bigger the negative, the lower the number. Chase!
You said number 3, or you did that one was asked.
Wait, did I say we weren't going to do number 3? Is there something wrong with number 3? Did I say I don't care?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did not. Oh. Are we going to do number 3 on the test? Nah, probably not. Let's just ignore it. Hope it goes away. There's never any false and misleading information ever in the world out there. Connor Morgan?
How do you do number 15?
15. Is that up here? Or no? What? Bottom of this page? That's 12. Sorry. Did you do the distributive property? Here is what I would stress. If you got something wrong, it's probably right here. You have to get rid of this parentheses. You have to multiply that -2 by both of those, right? Chase? Was that yours?
No,
Connor, what's -2 times 2x?
Negative, 4x.
-4x. One negative
Wait,
makes
why
it
would-
negative. -2 times -2 is -4. Or -2 times +2 is
No,
negative.
I don't know. I put it like -2 times -2 there. But I
And
said
then
that wrong.
this one's a negative times a negative, so it's positive 16. Now, unfortunately, what happens to this, children, is this. You get -16. You get a 0 over here. Okay? And you can't just stop there and say your answer is 0, because you need to know what the other side is as well. Okay? When you add 4x to -4x, you get 0x. And if you stop and ask yourself, what times 0 gives you 0? That's all numbers. And that's why there's an infinite amount of solutions. Okay? You can't stop. If you would have stopped with a 0x, and you would have got a number over here, that would have been what? Okay, look at the 4 different choices we had. We got this is one choice. You can get 0x equals some number. If you end up with this, what's your answer? Somebody? My kingdom. Cassie, what's my answer? Grace? It's what?
0.
It is not 0. Let's put 0 up there. 7x equals 0. In this case, your answer is 0. In this case here, this is Chase. Yeah, this is no solution. You can't do it because zero times nothing will give you 5. You have to think about this as like dividing by 0. It's impossible, you can't do it. Okay, this has no solution. If it equals 0, some number times x equals 0, your answer is 0. If it's 0 times some number gives you a different number, that's no solution. If it is 0x equals 0, it's infinite amount of solutions because anything works. You get the 3 different differences there, so you really need to work it to the end to see which one of those cases it is. Exactly.
What if it was, let's say 7 and 4?
7. What?
If it was 7 and 4, what would that be?
7 goes where and 4 goes where? 7x equals 4?
Yeah.
Well, then you get one answer because you would divide by 7 and it'd be 4 sevens. 7x equals 4, you divide by 7, you divide by 7, x is 4 sevens. This is what happens when there's zeros in your answers. Wow. I think there is. Yes, Emma.
How would I write notes for second?
Wait, you're asking me how you're going to write notes?
Like how?
With a pencil or a pen and a piece of paper? What is number 6?
It's the one with all the letters and distributed properties.
Distributive property and simplified. I mean, I can't, I don't know what, it was like that whole quiz we did. No, you're gonna, you want me to do this one?
Sure.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Everybody else in agreement on that or no?
Yeah.
Yes.
Alright, so what I would do, the first thing I would do, ladies and gentlemen, if this were me, is I would get out an entire piece of paper to do this on. I would put this on the biggest piece of paper and write as big as I humanly can. Where'd it go? Because the more space you take to do this, the better your chances of getting it right are. So this is how this works out. So I multiply the 2 tops together for this first one. I get a to the negative first, b, c, over on the bottom, x, y, is that a what? A to what? Negative 6? Negative 5, z, negative 2. Then I would do the same thing times the other one. A to the negative 1 and a to the negative 3 is what? Anybody?
A to the negative 4.
Right, because you add exponents together. Z negative 2 all over x. Stop me there if you don't get that. Everybody good with that? Now the unfortunate thing is most mistakes happen when you start doing simplifying of that. Then the next thing I probably would do would be to make all my negative exponents positive. So I'm going to move these 2 to the top and that one to the bottom. So I end up with b, c, a to the 5th, z squared over x, y, a. So first. Everybody good with that? And this one I'd have to move the a and the z to the bottom, so it's 2 over a to the 4th, z squared x. Now everything's positive. Then I see which numbers or letters can kind of cancel out with each other. What do I have here? I just have an a to the 5th, which means this will end up being a to the 4th. That's all. So b, c, a to the 4th, z squared over xy plus, wait, is this a 2? So nothing crosses off there. A to the 4th, z squared x. And I hope that that is the whole thing. Did I do something wrong? Usually. I think I'm on my A game right now. Dotson?
What was the answer for 11?
Number 11, 1/3. Is that right? Dotson?
How did you do 11?
How would I do it? A bag containing 6 red and 4 blues. Did you draw yourself a bag?
Yeah.
Did you put 6 red and 4 blues? Red, 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 blue, 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 blue. By the probability of drawing a red marble. So I'm drawing a red marble, keeping it, and then drawing another red marble. So here we go. How many red marbles are there to begin with? Out of a total of 6/10. That's your first probability. Now you take that marble out, there's no longer 6 red marbles in there, and there's no longer 10 marbles in the bag. Your second probability is only 5 out of 9, correct?
Yeah.
And your probability of both of them happening is what you multiply them together. A little cross canceling here. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3. It's 1/3 would be my surmise. Did you forget to take the marble out?
I forgot to take the marble, like
Keep it out?
from the bottom.
Yeah. Keep it and draw another. Nobody on any of those other ones? Wow, you guys are very smart, Madison. Very smart. Yes, Madison. Oh wait, you're not raising your hand.
I am.
Yes, Madison.
Number 12.
Madison says number 12. In a road sign in Europe shows the distance between two cities is 850 kilometers. If 1 kilometer equals 0.62 miles, what's the distance between the two cities in miles? Again, you could probably do this out as a ratio box. You're comparing kilometers to miles. This is the scale and this is the actual. If 1 kilometer equals 0.62 miles, and you have 850 of these, how do I go from 1 to 850? Multiply by 850. Well, I'm going to guess the answer is just 850 times 0.62. Did it end up being 500 something or whatever? 40 something? Does that work? Sure, Mr. Hunt.
This was wrong.
Does it? I don't know. This math confuses me more than it do. 51, 0, 0, 7, 2, 5, 2 decimal places. 527 miles? Madison, what did you do?
I got 529 miles.
Because you multiplied wrong?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you for having me do the problem because of your multiplication. That won't happen. So note to self, multiply right. Maybe you should put that at the top of your piece of note paper. Why don't you put add, subtract, multiply, and divide right as your first note. And then maybe all of your worries will be over, fish.
13, how do you identify if it's
Oh, arthritic or whatever?
Yeah, sequence.
That's a good question. And this probably won't come up very hard. If right here, something is arithmetic, if there is a common difference, if you add or subtract to get to the next terms. If you add or subtract to get to the next term, it's going to be an arithmetic one. For instance, this one was always adding 7. If you multiply to get to the next term, it's called the geometric one. In other words, if my first term was 2, and then I went 4, and then I went 8, and then I went 16, and then I went 32, what am I doing between each one of these? I'm multiplying by 2. This is called a geometric one if it's multiplication. If you add or subtract between the two, it's called an arithmetic one. We can't change that. Somewhere along the line we talked about that. I probably skipped it. Probably my fault. Are most of the world's problems today, except for the impeachment process. That's not really my fault. Third time in history. Last time somebody was impeached, was that Nixon? Doesn't remember being impeached, or was that all just goofy things?
I also was gonna be impeached, but then he quit and stuff like
That
that.
was Nixon.
Yeah, that was just-
Poor guy. Yes, ma'am.
So number 1 is a prime factorization the one where you can.
Factor tree?
Yeah.
It is. We break it down by division by prime or by whatever else. Please let me pay attention to problem number 8. You know, if they give you, if it's a cubed one, it doesn't matter. You know, the difference between -2 cubed and -2 cubed if it's 3 times, you're always gonna get a negative. The answer to that is -8. But if it's a squared, people, if on tomorrow's test it's squares, there is a huge difference between -2 squared and -2 squared. And a lot of you on the last quiz got it completely backwards. Andrew says, can you do that in a different color? Which one is going to be positive and which one's going to be negative? Remember, the exponent only goes for what's directly in front of it. Directly in front of this exponent is a 2. It is 2 times 2, which is 4, and then this little negative sign gets tacked on. So the answer to this is -4. The exponent here is directly in front of a parenthesis, which means whatever's in the parenthesis gets squared, which means you have a -2 times a -2, which is a +4. I don't know on tomorrow's test. If it's a cubed, it doesn't matter because an odd number of negatives is going to give you negative. You'll get negatives in both cases. If it's a squared or a fourth or a sixth or an eighth, then it makes a huge difference. Sophia?
So what if it's positive?
Positive, your answer is going to be positive.
Okay, and if the negative and the positive is going to be like if it's
Give me an example. A hard example.
-2 squared.
-2 is it in parentheses? Squared is 2 times 2, 4, and a negative, -4. You said something about positives. That's
Why wouldn't it be negative?
because the only thing you're squaring is the 2. 2 times 2 is 4, and then there's just one negative outside. One negative makes
Oh,
a
so
negative.
you only want from the 2, and then if it's in
Because
parentheses, you want
if it's in
negative.
parentheses, that means everything in the parentheses gets multiplied, and that makes 2 negatives, which gives you a positive.
Okay. Okay.
It's a common mathematical ploy by the math people to try to trick you up. As a
For number 4, it said to put it in scientific notation. Does that mean like with the times 10 or without?
Yeah, scientific notation is times.
Okay. That's all I need.
Just remember, your answer has to be between 1 and 10, which that one didn't change.
Oh.
But,